Now, arguably the most important part of any sort of experiment is data collection. There's no point in running an experiment if you can't find out what the result is. And ArcVR Core comes built in with a sort of data collection tool. And we're going to take a look at this now. So simplest way to go about this is we'll just select really any objects. I'm just going to choose the earn experiment object and add an AVR logger. So we can choose a file. So an AVR logger will essentially just write down a table of any sort of data points that we choose over time. And I'm just going to, so in the properties, you can select a file path, so where that table will be written. You can choose a delimiter, so it will be a .csv format, and some CSV files have a colon as a parameter, others have a semicolon. If you select the manual log option, then the logger will only log data if you call it explicitly. So you'll have to call this object and say log now. Otherwise, you can have it to log automatically. For instance, we're just going to log it on the on update function, and then you can select the columns that you want in your table here. So I'm going to add one column, which is just going to be time. So as the label, I'm just going to insert time, and the type, there already comes a built-in time type. So first column time, and now as the second one, we preferably want to track what kind of ball the player has grabbed or what they are holding. So I'm just going to call it grabbed object. And as type, we're going to set custom. Now, we can essentially, the data logger works through C# sort of reflection, and you can choose any sort of field from any object to log in here. Now, since we are trying to log what type of object or what type of ball the player is currently holding onto, the most logical place to look would be at the sort of basic grab provider under right controller. And if we open the documentation for that by clicking this button here, we can just browse through the members, and you will note that there is a protected attribute called grabbed object, and the grabbed object is the object that is currently being grabbed, null if no object is being grabbed, so that suits our needs. Now, it is a protected attribute, but since the logger works with reflection, you can even get private or public or protected or any sort of members you want. So we are going to select the basic grab provider as our target and set the field to the grabbed object. So I'm going to insert grabbed object here. And then the read type, we're just going to leave on auto. And if I now run the experiment again, so now we can browse to the file path that we set. So that would be under logs, and there will be a sample.log file here. And the first column will be the time in seconds, and the second column will be the grabbed object. So if we browse through it, we see we weren't grabbing onto anything, but between second 11.9 and second 13.37, we were holding onto sphere 28. If we check what sphere 28 is, we can see that it is a red sphere. So if you wanted to make this slightly more sophisticated, then you would expose the color of the sphere in some field somewhere or name the spheres after that color. And that way you would have that data here immediately and you wouldn't have to look it up. Similarly, if the player, which color the player guesses, you merely need to expose it in some field of some object anywhere, and then you can just log it through the logger by choosing the target and that given field.